Hello and welcome to KRQE's Holiday Stories. I'm Gabrielle Burkhart. First published in 1843, Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol remains one of the most enduring holiday stories, reminding us about generosity, redemption, and the true spirit of Christmas. There are many adaptations to this story. One of my favorites is The Muppet Christmas Carol as a kid. And I'm no Michael Caine as Scrooge, but let's dive into this timeless classic. Marley was dead. There was no doubt whatever that old Marley was dead as a doornail. This must be distinctly understood, or nothing wonderful can come of the story of Ebenezer Scrooge. A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. Once upon a time, of all the good days in a year, on Christmas Eve, old Scrooge was at work in his counting house when his nephew Fred came in. "A Merry Christmas, Uncle." "Bah," said Scrooge. "Humbug." He was a scraping old sinner. Scrooge was hard and sharp as flint. "If I could work my will," he continued, "every idiot who goes about with Merry Christmas on his lips would be boiled and buried with a stake of holly." "Uncle," pleaded Fred, "you don't mean that. Come dine with us tomorrow." "Humbug," said Scrooge, and he waved his nephew out the door. At day's end, Scrooge's clerk, Bob Cratchit, snuffed the candle out and put on his hat to go. "You'll want the day off tomorrow, I suppose," Scrooge grumbled. "Christmas! A poor excuse for picking a man's pocket every 25th of December." Scrooge walked out after him with a growl. When Scrooge arrived home, however, something strange happened. As he put his key in the lock, he saw in the knocker, not a knocker, but the face of his dead partner, Jacob Marley. "Humbug," said Scrooge. All at once it was a knocker again. Quite satisfied, he closed the door and locked himself in. Scrooge has dressed for bed and settled in before the fire when he was startled by a clanking noise, as if someone were dragging a heavy chain in the cellar. Then he heard the noise much louder, on the floors below, then coming up the stairs, then coming closer still. A figure came on through the heavy door. "Who are you?" trembled Scrooge. "Ask me who I was." "Who were you then?" "In life I was your partner, Jacob Marley." "Humbug, I tell you, humbug." At this the spirit raised a frightful cry. "Hear me," bellowed the ghost. "I wear the chains of greed I forged in life. I am here to warn you that you have yet a chance and hope of escaping my fate. You will be haunted tonight by 3 spirits." I think I'd rather not," said Scrooge. "Without their visits," said the ghost, "you cannot hope to shun the path I tread. Expect the first when the bell tolls 1. Then the ghost floated out upon the bleak, dark night. Scrooge certainly could not sleep now. He had no choice but to wait upon the tolling of the hour. "Ding dong!" "A quarter past," said Scrooge, counting. "Ding dong!" "Half past," said Scrooge. "Ding dong!" "A quarter to it," said Scrooge. "Ding dong!" "The hour itself," said Scrooge. The bell sounded with a deep, dull, hollow, melancholy one. Light flashed up in the room, and the curtains of his bed were drawn. The curtains of his bed were drawn aside, you see, by hand. "Who and what are you?" Scrooge demanded. "I am the ghost of Christmas past." "Long past?" inquired Scrooge. "No, your past." It clasped him gently. "Rise and walk with me." Scrooge was helpless as together they passed through the wall. Scrooge saw that they now stood upon an open country road. The city had entirely vanished. "I know this place," he gasped. "I was a boy here." A group of boys in great spirits came along the road, and Scrooge called out to them. The ghost held up a hand. "These are but shadows of the things that have been," it said. "They cannot see or hear anything of us." The boys came on, and Scrooge knew every one. Why did his heart leap as they passed? Why was he filled with gladness when he heard them shout "Merry Christmas"? What was Merry Christmas to Scrooge? What good had it ever done him? "The school is not quite deserted," said the ghost. "They entered a bare room made barer still by the lines of desks. At one of these a lonely boy sat reading. Scrooge crept closer, and a weight fell upon his heart. "Could it be?" he whispered. "Yes," said the spirit. "The boy was Scrooge himself, so many years before. He has no place to go this Christmas," remembered Scrooge, as a tear came to his eye. The ghost smiled thoughtfully. "Let us see another Christmas." They were now in the busy thoroughfares of a city. The ghost stopped at a certain warehouse door and asked Scrooge if he knew it. "Was I apprenticed here?" marveled Scrooge. They went in. At sight of an old gentleman, Scrooge cried, "Why, it's old Fezziwig, alive again!" Fezziwig called out in a rich voice, "You, ho there, Ebenezer!" Scrooge's former self, now grown a young man, came briskly in. "No more work tonight," said Fezziwig. "It's Christmas Eve." In no time, the warehouse was converted to as bright a ballroom as you would desire to see upon a winter's night. Guests arrived, and among them a fair young girl who took the hand of young Ebenezer Scrooge. There were dances, there was cake, and there was a great piece of cold roast. Scrooge's heart and soul were in all of this. He remembered everything, enjoyed everything. When the cheerful voices died away, he was sad to hear them go, hers most of all among them. Scrooge hung his head, conscious of being exhausted, and further of being in his own bedroom. The ghost had vanished. Scrooge barely had time to fall into bed before he sank into a sleep as heavy as his heart. Awakening in the middle of a snore, Scrooge did not need to be told that the bell was again upon the strike of the hour. A strange voice called his name. "Know me better, man!" exclaimed the ghost. "I am the ghost of Christmas Present. You have never seen the like of me before." "Never," Scrooge made answer. "Touch my robe." Scrooge did as he was told and held it fast. They stood in the city streets on Christmas morning. The people who were shoveling away on the housetops were full of glee, calling out to one another and exchanging snowballs. The ghost led Scrooge straight to his clerk, Bob Cratchit's house. There was nothing of high mark in the Cratchit's Christmas dinner. They were a poor family, and Tiny Tim could not walk without his crutch. But they were happy, grateful, pleased with one another, and contented with the time. Bob Cratchit said he didn't believe there ever was such a tender goose as the one his wife had cooked, and his voice trembled when he said that Tiny Tim was growing strong and hearty. Then Bob proposed, "A Merry Christmas to us all, my dears. God bless us." "God bless us, everyone," said Tiny Tim, the last of all. "Spirit," said Scrooge, "tell me if Tiny Tim will live." "I see an empty seat," replied the ghost, "and a crutch without an owner." "No, no," said Scrooge. "Oh no, kind spirit, say he will be spared." But the ghost did not respond. It was a great surprise to hear a hearty laugh at that moment. It was an even greater surprise for Scrooge to recognize it as his nephew's and to find himself in his living room. "He said that Christmas was a humbug," cried Scrooge's nephew. "He's a comical old fellow." "I'm sure he's very rich," hinted Scrooge's niece. "What of that, my dear?" said Scrooge's nephew. "His wealth is of no use to him. He doesn't do any good with it. He doesn't make himself comfortable with it. He hasn't the satisfaction of thinking, ha ha ha, that he is ever going to give us any of it." Scrooge cast his eyes upon the ground, but he raised them speedily on hearing what his nephew spoke next. "Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to the old man wherever he is. He wouldn't take it from me, but he may have it nevertheless. Uncle Scrooge." "Uncle Scrooge," they cried, "and a Merry Christmas to you, my darlings." Scrooge responded gratefully, forgetting that his voice made no sound in their ears. Soon they began playing games, for it is good to be children sometimes, and never better at Christmas. Scrooge begged like a boy to be allowed to stay. "1 half-hour, spirit, only one." But the ghost was gone. The chimes were ringing. Scrooge remembered the prediction of old Jacob Marley and beheld a solemn phantom, draped and hooded, coming like a mist along the ground, toward him. "I am in the presence of the ghost of Christmas yet to come," said Scrooge. The spirit answered not, but pointed onward with its hand. Although he was used to ghostly company by this time, Scrooge feared the silent shape, and he found that he could barely stand to follow it. "Will you not speak to me?" It gave him no reply. The city seemed to spring up around them. The specter gestured to a knot of businessmen. "I don't know much about it," said a fat man with a monstrous chin. "I only know he's dead." "It's likely to be a very cheap funeral, for upon my life I don't know of anybody to go to it," said another. Scrooge did not know what to make of this conversation. It could not be about the death of Jacob, his old partner, for that was past, and this ghost's province was the future. The specter led Scrooge into a low-down shop where a woman was untying a heavy bundle. "Bed curtains," said the shopkeeper. "You don't mean to say you took 'em down, rings and all, with him lying there dead?" "Yes, I do," replied the woman. "If he wanted to keep 'em after he was dead, he'd have had somebody looking after him instead of gasping out his last there alone by himself. Ha, ha, ha." Scrooge shuddered from head to foot. The scene had changed, and how he almost touched a bare bed, on which, beneath a ragged sheet, there lay unwatched, unwept, uncared for, the body of this man. "Let us leave this fearful place," Scrooge cried. "Spectre," said Scrooge after they had gone, "tell me what man that was whom we saw lying dead." The phantom led him among the graves of a churchyard and pointed down to one. "Answer me one question first," said Scrooge. "Are these the shadows of the things that will be, or are they the shadows of what might be only?" Still the ghost pointed, as immovable as ever. Scrooge crept forward, trembling as he went, and read upon the neglected grave of his own name, Ebenezer Scrooge. "Am I that man who lay upon the bed?" he cried. "No, spirit, oh no, no! I am not the man I was. I will honor Christmas in my heart and keep it all year. I will live in the past, the present, and the future. The spirits of all three shall live within me. Oh, tell me I may wipe away the writing on this stone." Holding up his hands in a last prayer to have his fate reversed, Scrooge saw a change in the phantom's hood and dress. It shrunk, collapsed, and dwindled down into a bedpost. Yes, and the bedpost was his own. The bed was his own. The room was his own. Best and happiest of all, the time before him was his own, to make amends in. Scrooge opened his window. "What's today?" he called down to a boy in the street. "Why, Christmas Day," replied the boy. "I haven't missed it," said Scrooge to himself. "My fine fellow, do you know whether they've sold the prize turkey that was hanging up next to the street?" "What, the one as big as me?" returned the boy. "Go and buy it, and I'll give you a shilling. Come back in less than 5 minutes, and I'll give you a half-crown." The boy was off like a shot. "I'll send it to Bob Cratchit's," whispered Scrooge, rubbing his hands and splitting with a laugh. "He shan't know who sends it. It's twice the size of Tiny Tim. Ha, ha, ha!" Really, for a man who had been out of practice for so many years, it was a splendid laugh. After sending off the turkey, Scrooge dressed himself all in his best and set out for his nephew Fred's house. It is a mercy his nephew didn't shake his arm off when he arrived. Scrooge felt at home in 5 minutes. Nothing could be heartier. Wonderful party, wonderful games, wonderful happiness. Scrooge was early at his office the next morning. "Hello," he pretended to growl when Bob Cratchit arrived a few minutes late. "What do you mean by coming here at this time of day?" "It's only once a year, sir," pleaded Bob. "It shall not be repeated." "I'm not going to stand for this sort of thing, and therefore," Scrooge said, leaping from his stool. "A Merry Christmas, Bob. A merrier Christmas than I have given you for many a year. I'll raise your salary," he continued with an earnestness that could not be mistaken, "and do what I can to assist your struggling family." Scrooge was better than his word. He did it all and infinitely more. and to Tiny Tim, who did not die. He was a second father. He became as good a friend, as good a master, and as good a man as the good old city knew. And it was always said of him that he knew how to keep Christmas as well as anyone alive. May that be truly said of all of us. And so, as Tiny Tim observed, God bless us, everyone. I just love that story. Merry Christmas to you all.